Welcome to Southern Steep, the public health and social justice podcast brought to you by NASDAD, a nonprofit, nonpartisan association mission to end the intersecting epidemics of HIV, viral hepatitis, and related conditions. Much like brewing stronger tea, this platform aims to brew a stronger community by centering community leaders' voices and their innovative work in the Southern United States.
Hey, Rodderick, welcome to Southern Steep.
Hello, Bianca Ward. How are you?
Delightful as always. Is this your first episode?
This is technically my second episode.
Okay. Well, our first episode together, so I'm really excited.
Yeah.
And we have an amazing guest that I cannot wait to get to know. Today we are joined by Christina Woodhouse of JASMYN. Hi, Christina.
Hi, how's everybody doing?
Wonderful. Have you ever done a podcast before?
I had a feeling you were going to ask me that.
Yeah. Standard. It's standard.
Technically, yes, but I don't know if it's been posted. It was over my winter break with my sister this past December.
So all that to say that you are very well experienced and you know exactly how this goes.
I'll say moderately. So yeah,
okay.
we'll go with that.
All right. Well, welcome. We're excited to have
Thank
you. What we like to always do, one of my favorite segments of any Southern Steep is to read the bios of our guests. I love being able to give our listeners an opportunity to get to know who we're talking to. And also, I always think it's kind of cool when you hear about yourself, just to be reminded of like the dope things you've done in the past. All right, so let's get to know Christina. Christina is the Assistant Director of Health Services at JASMYN, a teen and young adult LGBTQIA+ center in Jacksonville, Florida. She leads a team of 9 dynamic and passionate individuals conducting HIV prevention work. She oversees the clinical services, which includes HIV testing, STI testing, and PrEP through the partnership with the Florida Department of Health in Duval County, status neutral care coordination services, and other supports for peer support coordinator program and the engagement and linkage program. Christina also provides training, presentations, and lectures for the community partners, rising medical professionals, and college students on the social determinants of health affecting LGBTQIA+ populations. Christina's passion and dedication for HIV work began while pursuing her master's degree in public health from Florida International University in Miami. Upon earning her MPH, she worked in Fort Lauderdale, Florida for a health equity CBO as a program manager, providing physical activity and nutrition programs in Palm Beach, Broward, and Miami-Dade Tri-County areas. She moved back to Jacksonville in 2019 and has been working and growing with JASMYN ever since. That is definitely an amazing bio and just a wealth of experience. So what's not included in your bio that you would want to share?
Gosh, that's a great question. I think anyone who works at a CBO, specifically in HIV prevention work, knows like it's other jobs and duties as assigned. So there's just so much more to me as a dynamic queer identified individual than just that. There's the piece in there about teamwork and growing and building and the connections that I feel like I've made with my team and JASMYN. And then on a personal level, like if you could include hobbies and fun stuff, like I really like photography and cameras and I collect old cameras and I'm a huge nerd about public health. Like, I get really excited when I'm like, oh, they're talking about this. And then I go on a tangent. So but all that can't fit in a bio. I guess it could, but yeah, that was my ADHD spiral.
No, we welcome it because you said a few things that I'm like, yep. So public health nerds, welcome to NASDAD. I feel like we all love it. Your photography hobby, passion, definitely here for any artistic expression. So that is amazing. Tell me a little bit more about how you got into this work.
So when I went to grad school, I went to FIU knowing that I wanted to study public health And I was really fixated on nutrition at the time. And during undergrad, I studied anthropology. So I kind of jumped from one to the other, though they're quite related in just very different ways. It's still social work nonetheless. And I studied nutrition and identity and how nutrition relates to individual identity, whether ethnic, racial, etc. And so I went into grad school thinking I wanted to help families prepare meals on a budget, like finding healthier ways to, nourish the body on a budget. And I did that. I ended up doing that when I graduated, but my last 2 semesters, I studied under Dr. William Darrow, and he had a big influence in how HIV was defined and discovered in the early 80s. And I'm going to say this, I think this is my truth. I went into public health not wanting to go into HIV work. I just was like, no, like this work is like what every public health professional does. I don't want to do that. I want to do this. But as soon as I took a class under him and I started realizing that it's just so much more. It's politically driven, unfortunately. Like politics plays a huge role in people's health, which it shouldn't. I mean, should it? In the way that it does, it should not. And I just got really looped in. And then I had to do this really big research assignment with my peers. And it happened over the course of 2 semesters. So I will admit that Dr. Dimitri Daskalakis is my man crush because of his status neutral work in New York City and the Stay Sure, Play Sure, Be Sure campaigns. And ever since then, I have been just in love with this work. And when I started at JASMYN, I started as a care coordinator. So I started at that coordination level, working with clients living with HIV, helping them learn how to manage health care when perhaps that wasn't something they had to do before. And then they get a diagnosis, and then they have to learn how to go to the doctor every day for their lives. And though that wasn't my lived experience, I've been going to the doctor since I was a child because I have my own health conditions. So I was able to provide that teaching moment and empowerment moment rather than just, there are some case managers in the world who are overworked, underpaid, and so they can't dedicate the work or their energy to the work that they want to. So I feel like JASMYN's a lot different here. So, I mean, that's another subject, but that's ultimately how I came to be in this work.
Rodderick and I have both been case managers, so we definitely know.
We understand that.
Yeah, I saw the look on your face when I said that. You were like, "Yep,
yes, yes," and hard work is really what it is, and it's really hard when there's so much to juggle, so much to manage, and just often not enough time and resources. So yes. That, and who doesn't love Dr. D? He is one of our favorite people here.
That is awesome. Yes, he was very influential in it's almost like my coming of age story. I was a little older going to grad school in comparison to some of my peers who went, straight from high school to grad school. I didn't do that. I took some breaks here and there. So for me, I felt like, some people say they find themselves in high school or in college. I feel like I truly found myself in grad school. I found myself, I used to, as someone who's in a part of the LGBTQ community, I didn't like going to Pride events. And now I do, because I remember I took the initiative myself. I got free condoms from the health department, and I went there to pass them out, and I got to talk to people. And I found a way to make it for me. Because at the time, I'm like, I don't really want to drink and party. Like, I want to talk to people about prevention. Now I want to do all of that, like maybe drink and party, but also hand out condoms and talk about prevention. So I found myself through Dr. Darrow. I owe him a lot. He was a great influence for me.
That is so. Rodderick, we're going to get into some specific questions about your role, but can you tell us a little bit about JASMYN, about the organization itself?
Yeah, absolutely. So JASMYN, in the past and up until recently, it's been, a youth LGBT center. Recently, we're trying to separate youth and really define what that means. So it's an LGBTQ plus, LGBTQIA plus, right? Because the spectrum is growing. Teen and young adult center, right? So we're here to empower teens and young adults to really separate the two. So I oversee the health services, where we also have housing support services. We have like teen programming services, which is a completely new department now. And then mental health services. So it's huge because we have a partnership with Smith University, and we get their social work MSW students that come here for 2 years, and they do basically an internship and offer free therapy while learning and getting certified here. And we have community partners with like Baptist Health and other agencies in Duval County that offer free psychiatric care for LGBTQ spectrum folks, which is really cool. So, and they even serve up to the age 29 because health services has up to age 29. So that's the cool thing about health services, is that while everything else at JASMYN is up to age 24, or the teens is up to age like 17 or 18, because I have a different type of grant, we can go up to 29. So it gives us an opportunity to really like see more folks in the community. So that's kind of the programmatic level of what we do. And then obviously we have advocacy workers. So we have an admin team, director of policy, who does all the background stuff of really keeping us in the loop of what's going on and how we can help as staff, how we can spread the word amongst the community partners, especially when there's like school board meetings and stuff like that. So we're super involved. Unfortunately, we are no longer involved with the GSA the same way because of recent school board basically pulled their contract with us, unfortunately. So we support where we can. And I think what it's going to look like is making sure we have a safe space here on campus to where they can hold GSA meetings here if they're not allowed to hold them in the school. And who knows, that might not be the case, but it's definitely something we're looking for. And we do a lot of HIV testing also on like student campuses, like UNF we're working with Edward Waters University, and then all of the smaller campuses, so FSCJ, which is all around Jacksonville. So we're just trying to be everywhere. That's JASMYN.
Oh my God, that is so amazing. Especially as like a social worker in training. I love that you guys have a mental health program, and I think it's a good opportunity for the youth to engage in their mental health, because I remember some years ago I did a panel, Connecting Generations, and I had a therapist come out and talk, and a lot of the youth were forced into therapy. But I think programs like you all, it allows them the opportunity to engage in mental health a little bit differently than being forced into therapy. So I love that. And when I do my master's program, I might have to come down and see y'all.
I love that. Oh, I would love to show you. And when you come here, our campus will be complete because there's so much construction. So yes, you are welcome to come anytime.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All righty. So tell me about the amazing community you serve.
So the LGBTQ plus community in Jacksonville is spread out, very diverse. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Jacksonville, but Jacksonville is one of the largest cities, if not the largest city landmass wise in the United States. So it goes from rural to city to suburban very quickly, just from one car ride from one zip code to the next. So our community is just very spread out. But where we're located is in this like Riverside area, which is one of those, I've heard it be called the Gayborhood before. I used to live in this area, so I could see it. So our community is, they're vibrant. And I think our community is trying to find joy in times when oppression exists, when they've always existed for queer people. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just making sure that we're here for young people who are in this community who don't even know we exist. And I like hearing stories of joy while also helping people who are going through some of the hardest things, because it gives me something to look forward to, and that like we are people who need services, the young people need things, but we're looking at the whole person is basically what I'm trying to say.
I love that. That is vitally important to be present and to be here for youth. And the words of Whitney Houston, the children is our future. So I love that. I love
We're
that.
gonna build them up. We've got to build them up.
Definitely. So, what are some factors that people should consider when working with youth and addressing their needs?
I think there's a few things. I think representation is important. And even when there's not representation, allyship is really, really important. Whether that means they're LGBTQ allies, we also have to think about race and ethnicity, right? So a lot of our youth, the predominantly youth that we see in health services, are identified as Black and brown, right? Depending on whatever they identify as. So the spectrum of Black and brown we know is rooted in different things. So whether it's their Hispanic ethnicity, Black African American, I think me as someone who identifies as cis and female and white, I have to know what that means. I can be an ally, but I have to know what that means. I have to actually do the work. That's important for working with youth in general, humans in general, and then someone who's working with youth who is even a part of the community needs to know that like things change through time and space. I find myself saying, holy crap, Gen Z, like what is going on with this generation? And I'm like, no, stop that. Because that's what my generation did before me and before them. And I'm trying to break that cycle. So getting people to see that if you want to work with youth and young adults even, you have to listen to them and include them at the table and give them autonomy, especially over things like their sexual health, over their bodies, and teach them a skill set because they want to learn. That's the biggest thing. And then basically knowing what's part of their pop culture, like what are they doing, what are they watching, what are they listening to, and rather than scolding them for what they're listening to, what the lyrics of the words might be saying, like engage with them about it, talk to them about it. It's okay to talk to young people about music that's different than your own, especially if we're a little older than them, right? If there's a huge age gap, seek for understanding, like deeper understanding.
I love all of that. Something I don't find that happens enough in terms of intergenerational conversations is positive reinforcement. So I love that you mentioned like the importance of, being aware of, the pop culture things that the youth are into. And I also think it helps cultivate and build rapport with youth as well.
Yes.
So I'm just loving all of this.
Absolutely. It's so true. We have to kind of be chameleons sometimes on a wall. Somebody said that once. Within my first year at JASMYN, we presented at USCHA and we talked about a youth empowerment folder, which was created by Abby George. She works here on my team. And now for the first time ever, it's going into print. We hired a queer Black artist to draw the drawings. And she put it inside Canva and did this beautiful presentation. So going from this little flip folder thing that we created, and then going from that, someone said at that presentation, they were like, well, you have to be a chameleon. You have to change your colors to fit in. You might have to change your outfit. Like I can wear jeans and a t-shirt to work knowing that I don't need to dress up all fancy because that might not connect with young people. And that's the most important thing, is being a chameleon. Knowing that you might not be a part of a community, but you can still understand and seek for understanding, basically.
Shout out to the Black queer artists before I continue.
Yes.
And this is coming from a Black queer artist.
Yes.
Artist gang in the building. I had a kind of like a follow-up question. I was just curious to know if you have any insight on working with youth who are experiencing homelessness. It was a question that came up on my webinar the other day. So I'm just curious to see if you have any insight on that.
Yes. So we have the whole housing team. Unfortunately, that is a subject that I'm not an expert on, being that it's a different team, but our teams often overlap because I have clients, the care coordination team has clients who need housing support very frequently. And the experience is, and especially, I don't know how it is everywhere else or in the South as a whole. I know in Duval County, housing is really hard here, especially as inflation has occurred, and there's not a lot of shelter options either for young and queer folks. Like, we have a relationship with a couple of the shelters here, which has been, brewing over many years of community partnerships. We are able to harness our community partnerships and hold on to them. But it's really bad here because if there's only one room that they offer us for queer people, and there are so many young people who are experiencing homelessness or houselessness, how are we supposed to help them? And then there's other oppressive factors, right? Like having to have a good credit score now, having to have no evictions on your record. But if they weren't set up for success, for whatever success looks like, how are they going to get those things? So it's just a system that keeps kicking them while they're down. It's just like a lot of the systems. So it's bad here. It's really hard when I hear people I supervise come and talk to me about, well, this client's getting evicted, getting kicked out of this. And it's like, there's literally nothing we can do. And that is the hardest thing about this work, is when we were at that point, when we're like, there's nothing we can do. How are you going to self-care when you go home? Because that's a hard thing to walk away from as a previous care coordinator. And I'm sure, as case managers, walking away from that and saying, how do I go live my life knowing that that person has to find their way tonight? It's hard.
Oh, the flashbacks. When me and Bianca worked together previously, one of the primary needs of our agency was housing, and we have had to have conversations similar to that with some of our patients. It is very difficult to have those conversations, especially even with LGBT youth and teens. I know like that is a big topic and issue, whereas for coming out, oftentimes teens are subjected to violence, and they might even get put out their home, and now they're homeless as youth. So it's a lot to unpack with that, but I'm not going to go on a tangent with that one.
It is a lot. It's hard because then when they're teens, then we have to involve the state with Child Protective Services have to get involved. And I know in some states, like parents trying to kick their kids out for being queer or on that spectrum, they see that as neglect. Whereas here, I don't really know how they get involved or the dynamics with that, because I'm not super familiar. But telling someone who's barely 18 years old that, sorry, there's nothing I can do, because at that point you can't involve protective services unless there's other circumstances. But it's hard. Kudos to you both for having done that work before. It's hard. It is hard.
Yeah, it really is. Thank you for sharing and indulging in that follow-up question with me. So what are some key successes that you found in working with youth engagement and doing outreach?
I think the biggest thing is it's not assuming that every young person knows how to work technology. Kind of like barriers that we're having just today with our own technology. And this isn't even our fault, like internet crashing and stuff like that. Not all young people know how to work their phone or know how to use a computer. And those are the biggest things. So the successes with that is acknowledging that we might need to have printouts of things. And we might need to have, so that the status sphere is what they're calling that youth empowerment folder that I was talking about. That can easily be digital for some, but it needs to be printed. So acknowledging where they are. I think that's what JASMYN does well, is acknowledging where young people are and meeting them, whether that's literally physically meeting them or meeting them emotionally, mentally, physically, all of those things. That is something as a big success. And I think it helps that most of the people who work at JASMYN, well, let me speak from my experience. I think that I remember what it was like to be a young person in need of things. And so I think it helps me to find success in that, is to see where I am now and knowing that other young people can go through really hard things and still make it somewhere with support, and they need support. That's another success, is like, if you only give them hard rules without some gray area, not everybody responds to that. So it's kind of taking every person as they come and not what you expect them to be. It's like taking away the expectations that maybe their parents were already putting on them because this is the way it's supposed to be. They already get that enough. they need to be taken as a whole person and be heard, and they need to be responsible and held accountable, but they need to be taught how to do that. And that's something I think we do well.
I really just had to pause and appreciate what you said about not all young people knowing how to use technology, because it's one of those things that, I don't know, I'm old. Just this assumption. I have a 10-year-old and he's constantly showing me how to do stuff and I don't, okay, or fixing the things and so just that understanding. And then you said it best again, meeting them where they are and also adapting to their needs. So I appreciate that, because I think sometimes we go in with these assumptions that young people know how to do all the things that I cannot do. And really the understanding that we're all learning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that as well. It goes back to what you were saying earlier about being a chameleon, where you have printable material for you to read about your services, but at the same token, you might have a social media presence for those that do engage in digital media of your youth population. So I do love that. And I also love the emphasis on youth being heard. I think a common expression, at least I know within my community, is a child should be seen and not heard. And it's so not true. Like, these are people, they're individuals, they have thoughts, they have feelings. And I think oftentimes, like, even that expression leads into your adult life, where you have to like adjust to being an adult with your elders and kind of have to set things clear. Like, I will be heard. You will not silence me. And it's a little bit harder to do that when you're younger. So I appreciate all of that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I helped with a focus group on one of the college campuses. It's an HBCU. And I'm just, in the background taking notes for the student who wanted to organize it. And one of the things that I heard was like, these are young people who are college age, probably anywhere between 18 to 21 years old, perhaps. And they are screaming for help. And they're telling people, this is what we need. This is what we need. And I'm going to make sure they're heard. I'm going to make sure they're heard, because they were maybe not heard as like even younger people, right? Teens, children, etc. So I agree with what you said. They're tiny humans who have voices and a lot of feelings and emotions, and that is just as valid as me and anyone else. So I love that.
You started to touch on something before when we were talking about just kind of case management and the feeling of, well, maybe not case management, but just working with clients in those moments where we want to do it all and we want to kind of fix and can't. And I know I've definitely been there many times. And I think, especially in the periods of my work where I have worked with youth, it's even harder, because again, I want to fix and protect and be that resource. So in the midst of all that, especially when this is your work, day in, day out, how do you take care of yourself? How do you encourage your team to take care of themselves? How do you prevent burnout, if that's even a possibility?
Those are really great questions. I think at JASMYN, that is something I feel like, having worked at another CBO before and then working in corporations before going into public health, I feel like JASMYN does have a really good policy about self-care, or at least maybe I feel like they do. I also feel like I have a really good policy as a supervisor, as a leader, in that, like, I think mental health days are important. And I feel like sometimes you just have to take them regardless of what event you have going on that day, because there's always someone else who can step in and do the work. And so for me, it's knowing that I can take PTO for a mental health day and I can call literally last minute. But for my team, it's knowing that, like, if they call out and they're like, I just can't do it today, I don't need an explanation. It's okay. And if I see them down the road in 5 Points at a bar that I might go to after work to like hang out and decompress, if they're there, I'm not going to say, well, you called out to work. Why are you here? I'm not going to do that, because that is so silly. The fact that we can't call out of work right? It's not considered like this normative thing in society to call out of work and then to be seen in public. Because I've definitely had those jobs in my 20s where I'm like, calling out of work, I can't be seen in this area. And I don't think people should, that's not a way to hold someone accountable. Like, let them go and frequent where they need to. And that's something my whole team knows. And we are constantly talking about that. Beam always has these really great like flyers on their website about how to like, they're like journal prompts. So before we start team meetings, we often use those journal prompts to like talk about how we're feeling, to be vulnerable, but also be realistic. Like, where are we actually at today? Because someone might not be able to give you what you think is, you need a 10 from someone, but maybe they're only at a 3 and they can't give you more than that. And so self-care at work means maybe also just meeting my people where they're at, where my team is at, and sending people home when they need to go home, even when they're like, no, I can do it. I'm like, but can you create a safe environment knowing that you can't even sit here without maybe sobbing today because of this is happening? Like, go take care of yourself, go work from home. So for me, self-care, I was talking to someone about this yesterday. Like, you know, that feeling when there's just so much work, you're like, you're feeling overwhelmed, but not overwhelmed. I don't know if that makes sense. It's mainly like, I feel overwhelmed, but not overwhelmed, in that I'm getting the work done. There's a lot going on. I'm moving forward. I see the big picture. I'm doing all the things, but I could very easily see how I could get overwhelmed if I'm like, well, I just need more time. So if I just do my work on the weekends and take all of my evenings to just finish it out, but then I'm like, no. That's where I stop myself. And I remember at the end of the day, I'm also a whole person and I'm an empath. So things get to me and I feel all of the things. So for me, it looks like turning my email off on my phone, regardless if I'm salary or not. It means not answering a phone call from even people I supervise after a certain point in time, because that's my time. And sometimes it means vegging in front of a TV and watching nothing but old reruns of Grey's Anatomy. Or playing The Sims on my computer like a 12-year-old. Like, I love stuff like that. Or reading a book, sitting on my porch. I love plants. I'm obsessed with orchids. So self-care looks different for me day to day. And you know, sometimes it might be going and doing a little dance at the silent disco, hanging out with friends. I do think I have pretty good boundaries with self-care, but I constantly have to work through them. And therapy is a great tool. If people have access to therapy, I support it because it's very helpful.
You are speaking our love languages here.
Period. I love languages. Like,
just all of them, because self-care looks different for everybody. Mm-hmm. And it really sounds like you have really are and continuing to find and create what works for you. The boundaries that you're setting sound amazing. And I think it's even, I hope someone who is new to this work is listening to this right now and setting those boundaries early, because I think they're things that, shouldn't take 5-10 years of being in public health or being of service before you realize the boundaries that you need to set,
right,
in order to be able to sustain yourself. Like, that is, hats off to you. I have one more question, and then I'll turn it back to Rodderick. But some of the things that you've mentioned that already sound fun and amazing, Sims and plants and silent disco.
Yes.
If you weren't in your current role, what would you want to be doing?
That's such a good question. I think about that sometimes. I really like capacity building. I like doing those community trainings. I love going to university campuses and talking to nursing students about how to work with the LGBTQ community and why it's important, and destigmatizing HIV. I really like talking about HIV for what it is and what it's not, and how it affects me as someone who's not living with HIV, and how it might affect someone who is living with HIV, just from perspectives of voices from people I've worked with. I love capacity building. I think it's really fun. I like the little light bulbs. I also like the hard questions, the ones where you can hear someone, you see the words coming out of their mouth and you're like, oh, that's such a problem, but I'm not going to shame them, but in your head, you're like, oh crap, how do I answer this? I love the hard moments. Like, even as someone who gets drained by people and I have to have those down moments on the couch watching Grey's Anatomy, like, I love doing those trainings. I love being myself in front of people and not hiding my identity. I like being out and saying, this is my identity. I can only speak for this. So capacity building is probably like my dream job. Yeah.
I don't know, Christina. That sounds like that's something that could be attainable in the future. Do we hear some consulting in the future coming from you?
I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
We'd love to see it.
I love it.
Alrighty. So let's have some fun. You're in the South, and this is all about the South and the Southern steep. So tell me, what do you love about the South?
Well, in thinking about the South, I grew up in the West. I grew up in Las Vegas. So there's a lot of differences and a lot of things I love. Actually, as much as I hate the summertime, I don't like the summertime. I'm not here for the heat. I prefer the humidity, though, over the dry. So I will say in the South, I love the humidity in comparison to a dry heat. I'll say that. The food in the South is definitely bomb. I love my community. So when I lived in South Florida, I didn't have a huge sense of community, which is a big reason why I ended up applying to JASMYN and coming and moving back to Jacksonville after I had moved away. I love my community here. I feel like community is different here than it was in Vegas for me. So I don't know if that's because it's the South, but I want to say it is. There's something about that. There's like camaraderie and connection. Maybe it's a little bit of trauma bonding because we're all in this together. I love that. That's, and I think there's a lot of beauty in the South.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and especially about the food part.
Yeah.
I'm a huge foodie, and Southern cooking is some of my favorite cuisine.
Yes, definitely.
Alrighty, and so in terms of, we talked about what you love about the South. Let me ask you, what do you want to see for the South? What would you like to see happen for your community in the South?
I feel like what I would like to see for the South is transformation, like true transformation, and making it so we're not constantly having to fight for youth to have autonomy because it's just given. And also just LGBTQ rights in general, like stop having to fight for those things because they're just given. And when we talk about ending HIV, I feel like that can't just be done with money and dollars, though all of that helps 100%. We need funding to do the work, but it's also about, in order to destigmatize something, to actually talk about what it is, what it isn't. We need to be talking about these things at younger ages, at age appropriate levels, from preschool all the way up. So I want to see that kind of transformation in the South, where it's not taboo to talk about sexual health in school, where it's not taboo to talk about LGBTQIA plus sexual health in school. I want to normalize that so people know that they can get their needs met and they can ask hard questions and communicate. And I want to see that happen. I want to see, for it to truly end the epidemic. We have to acknowledge that we are not giving a whole group of people autonomy over their bodies until, maybe when they're 18. And by then you haven't taught them any skill set. So those are the really big things that I would love to see in the South. Transformation.
I want that for the South too. I really do. And I love your emphasis on autonomy. One thing that I find that I'm constantly working with my therapist on is autonomy. And he assures me every time, like, you have your choice, you have your autonomy. No one can take that from you. And I think he's having to do that with me just because it's something that it's not taught to youth, and it's something that isn't embraced when dealing with them. So I love the emphasis on autonomy. All right. So, final question from me. Let our listeners know how can people get in touch with you and your programs?
So anyone who is in this Duval County area, or Area 4, as we like to call it, so that's like Northeast Florida, going to our website. So www.jasmyn, JASMYN.org. That's the best way right now. Our social media presence is very minimal right now. We're trying to rebrand and make things a little safer for our community because of doxing situations. So that will be up and running as soon as we know what our new hashtag and our new handle will be. But the website is the best way because I think it's a Squarespace website. So you can easily go on there and ask for more information. And often that gets routed right to all of the assistant directors and directors. So they kind of forward it out to where it needs to go. So our website, definitely.
Thank you. I mean, you've said so many things that have just really, again, spoken to me, spoken to, I know, the folks who are listening and in this work. And I think especially what you're doing for youth and the way that you all are empowering them speaks volumes. So thank you for your commitment to this work.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And you made it through another podcast, and we will be posting this one.
Okay. we have to let the world hear them gems that you've dropped on this episode. We appreciate you so much, Christina.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you all. And thank you for inviting me to do this. This is great.
Thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
It's now time for a segment we call Southern Charm. Here we highlight the work of someone or an organization that is charmingly impacting the South. For this edition of Southern Charm, we highlight the Community Health and Empowerment Network in Miami, Florida. The Community Health and Empowerment Network is a non-for-profit organization that exists to provide health education, screening services, and resources to individuals in the low-income and underserved population with a goal to help bridge health gaps in the community to reduce health disparities in Southern Florida. They do this by empowering individuals to make healthier life choices, thereby avoiding preventable diseases such as HIV/AIDS, heart disease, childhood obesity, and other preventable diseases. I wanted to highlight this organization in particular because it made me think of just some of the work that you and I have done together in the past, Rodderick. Specifically, they have a support group called Real Magnolias. And we love a good support group.
Love a good support group. No, I miss some of our ladies from our women's support group too. Love it.
So this one is a monthly support group that they have for women that is bi-weekly, and it's specifically a minority women's safe space to just talk and really be themselves. And so they have activities, social gatherings, they have testing and education, and just it seems like a variety of opportunities for women to kind of come and let their hair down and to be in community. And I think, especially at a time like this, or really any time, the opportunity for women of color, for Black women to come together and to be in sisterhood and community, we definitely want to uplift that. For more information about the Community Health and Empowerment Network in Miami, Florida, you can visit their website at www.healthempowermentnetwork.org. Once again, we'd like to thank our amazing guest, Christina from JASMYN. It was really great learning about her and just the amazing work that they are doing with the youth. Rodderick, we made it. It was wonderful and informative and great recording with you.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure to be in the space with you. And shout out to Christina and JASMYN for all the wonderful work that they're doing in Florida.
Absolutely. On that note, I'm Bianca Ward.
And I am Rodderick Shepherd.
Thanks for listening. We're out.